Hey guys, tonight we drift back along the Nile's warm, silty edge, where the water moves slowly enough that it feels like it's thinking things over, and you're standing there barefoot at dawn, toes sinking into cool mud as ancient Nubian traders prepare for a journey that will test every practical decision you've ever made. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, feel free to drop a comment with your location and the local time. It's oddly comforting to know someone else is half awake somewhere across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in Nubia, south of Egypt, sometime in the long stretch of antiquity when this region is already famous for its gold. Mainstream history agrees on this much. Nubia was one of the ancient world's most reliable sources of gold, feeding the appetites of Egyptian temples, royal treasuries, and foreign traders who never quite admitted how dependent they were on it. You don't see coins here yet. Instead, you see dust, nuggets, flakes wrapped in cloth, and the kind of careful handling usually reserved for newborns or extremely temperamental cats. The morning light spreads slowly, and you watch as traders crouch near shallow trays, swirling water and sand in practiced circles. This is gold washing, simple and ancient, and it works because gold is heavier than nearly everything else. As the lighter sand slips away, the heavier particles stay behind, glinting just enough to keep everyone awake. You try it yourself, hands awkward at first, then steadier. It's oddly soothing, like stirring soup you're never going to eat. A widely accepted historical fact is that Nubian gold came from both river deposits and desert mines. Some worked centuries before Rome was even an idea. Less mainstream, but endlessly repeated, is the claim that certain families swore their gold sang differently when poured, an early form of quality control that may have been more about superstition than acoustics. Historians still argue whether these stories reflect real metallurgical differences or simply the pride of traders who wanted their gold to feel special. As the sun lifts higher, the mood shifts from quiet collection to quiet accounting. There's no shouting, no dramatic gestures. Everything here is subdued because attention is the enemy. You notice that people avoid obvious displays of excitement when a particularly rich pan turns up. Instead, there's a nod, maybe a soft hum, as if acknowledging a job well done without jinxing it. One trader catches you staring and gives you a look that clearly says, "Yes, it's gold. No, you may not lick it." You learn quickly that gathering gold isn't just about finding it, it's about deciding what counts. Tiny flakes are valuable but annoying. Larger nuggets are satisfying but risky. Too much weight in one place is a problem waiting to happen. This is where experience shows. Older traders separate the gold into grades, not with scales yet, but with eyes and fingers trained over decades. They rub grains between thumb and forefinger, feeling for density, listening for that imagined song. There's a quirky tidbit passed around as everyone works. Some traders swear that gold washing at dawn makes it purer because the river hasn't yet been tired by the sun. Scientifically questionable, spiritually comforting. You file it away alongside modern ideas like morning coffee tastes better if you don't check your emails first. As the piles grow, so does the unspoken tension. Gold attracts more than admiration, it attracts problems. You notice how quickly finished trays are moved away from the riverbank into the shade, closer to camp. Even here, among familiar faces, caution is constant. The desert journey hasn't even begun, and already the mental packing is underway. You're struck by how ordinary all of this feels. There's no fanfare, no sense of history being made. Someone complains about a sore knee. Someone else jokes that the river is holding on to them today. This is another mainstream truth historians agree on. Most ancient trade wasn't dramatic, it was routine. The drama only appears later when someone writes it down with a flair for storytelling. As the morning edges towards late, the gold is gathered, sorted, and temporarily stored. You're not yet allowed to see exactly how it's packed. That's knowledge earned, not given. But you sense the care already shaping every decision. Weight, concealment, trust. You realize that this moment by the Nile is just as important as the desert itself. Mistakes made here echo for weeks. Before moving on, you take one last look at the river. It glides past, indifferent to your plans, having carried gold long before you arrived and ready to carry it long after you're gone. There's something calming in that. You breathe in, breathe out, and feel the first hint of that sleepy acceptance settle in, the understanding that this journey will move at its own pace and you're just along for the walk.
You don't really notice the camels at first, which is strange, because once you do notice them, they're impossible to ignore. They loom quietly at the edge of camp, chewing with the slow confidence of animals that know they are essential and in no rush to prove it. You move closer, and the smell hits you. Warm fur, old leather, and something vaguely like damp hay left in the sun too long. This is where the gold journey truly becomes a group effort, because no Nubian trader is crossing the desert alone, and no amount of precious metal moves without a living, mildly judgmental transport system. Choosing companions comes first. This is a mainstream historical reality. Desert trade in Nubia relied heavily on kinship networks and long-standing partnerships. You don't just pick the strongest people, you pick the most predictable ones. The man who snores but never lies. The woman who complains constantly but has never once misplaced a pouch. You realize quickly that personality is as important as muscle. One bad decision here, and weeks later you're arguing over water rations with someone you already regret inviting. You're introduced to the group with minimal ceremony. Names are exchanged, but more important are the glances, long, assessing looks that weigh you up the same way gold dust was weighed earlier. Can you walk? Can you keep quiet? Can you resist the urge to tell everyone exactly what you're carrying? You nod a lot and try to look useful. Inside, you're wondering how long it will take before someone notices you've never packed gold across a desert before. Then there are the camels. These aren't the romantic postcard camels of modern imagination. They are working animals, tall and angular, with expressions that suggest they've seen every human mistake imaginable and are deeply unimpressed. Historically speaking, the dromedary camel, single-humped and perfectly adapted to arid environments, was crucial to Nubian and trans-Saharan trade routes. Without camels, this entire operation collapses into a very hot walking tour with tragic consequences. You watch as traders inspect each camel with careful hands. Teeth are checked, feet are examined for cracks, packs are adjusted, removed, adjusted again. A quirky tidbit circulates as you work. Some traders swear camels can smell fear in gold carriers and will deliberately act stubborn if they sense nervousness. You're not sure if this is true, but one camel does stare at you for an uncomfortably long time, and you make a mental note to project calm competence even if you're faking it. Historians still argue whether camel caravans became dominant in Nubia earlier or later than in neighboring regions, but there's no debate here about their value. You see how carefully loads are distributed even before the gold comes out. Nothing is placed randomly. Every sack has a counterweight. Every rope is tested twice. Someone explains, gently but firmly, that a poorly balanced camel will remember the insult and express its displeasure at the worst possible moment, usually on a narrow desert path with no shade. The human side of preparation continues alongside the animal inspection. You're encouraged to eat now, not later.
Simple food, flatbread, dates, something salty. This is another accepted fact. Traders fueled up early because midday meals in the open desert were inefficient at best and miserable at worst. Someone cracks a joke about how eating now saves time later when you're too tired to chew properly anyway. That's joke one, soft and sleepy. Water skins are checked, and this is where you feel the weight of reality settle in. Each person is responsible for their own supply, but the group watches closely. Too little water makes you a liability. Too much makes you slow. It's a delicate balance that feels uncomfortably modern, like packing a carry-on bag and realizing you've overthought everything. Trust is established in small rituals. Someone shares a story about a previous journey. Someone else finishes it, correcting a detail. Laughter follows, not loud, just enough to signal shared memory. You understand that these stories aren't entertainment, they're credentials. They say, "I've done this before, and I didn't ruin it." A fringe belief surfaces as the group finalizes roles. Some traders prefer odd-numbered caravan sizes, believing even numbers invite misfortune. Others roll their eyes but don't argue. It costs nothing to add one extra person or animal, and peace of mind is a valuable commodity. You think about how little human nature has changed. If a superstition doesn't slow you down, why not keep it? As roles are assigned, you notice how quietly leadership operates. There's no single boss barking orders. Instead, decisions emerge through consensus, guided by the most experienced voices. This reflects a broader historical pattern in Nubian trade communities, where authority was often situational rather than absolute. You respect it immediately. It feels efficient, and more importantly, it feels calm. You're given a simple task, helping adjust pack frames, and you do it carefully, aware that this is your audition. One wrong knot, and you'll be remembered forever as the one who almost lost the gold. No pressure. Someone offers a tip about tying leather straps so they loosen gradually rather than snapping. You thank them like they've just shared a life secret, which honestly they have. As the sun climbs higher, the group settles into readiness. The camels kneel, loads still empty of gold but heavy with promise. People move more slowly now, conserving energy. The initial bustle fades into a focused quiet. You realize that choosing companions and camels isn't just logistical, it's psychological. These are the beings you'll trust with your life, your water, and the small, glittering weight of Nubian gold that hasn't yet been revealed. You take one last look around camp. Everyone seems ready, even relaxed. It dawns on you that this calm isn't accidental, it's practiced. The desert punishes panic, and these people have learned to leave it behind before the first step is taken.
By the time the gold comes back into view, the sun has climbed high enough that everything feels a little softer around the edges, as if the heat has blurred the world just slightly. You're led to a shaded spot, cloth stretched between poles, light filtering through in dusty stripes, and this is where wealth becomes strangely quiet. No clinking coins, no dramatic chests, just small piles, wrapped bundles, and the careful movements of people who know that measuring gold is as much social negotiation as mathematics. You kneel with the others, and you're shown the tools. No standardized coins yet, not here. Instead, there are balance scales, small stone or metal weights, and an impressive amount of trust layered with suspicion. A mainstream historical fact settles in. Ancient Nubian traders, like many in the ancient world, relied on weight-based systems to value gold, often using debans or similar units shared with Egyptian trade networks. It sounds orderly in textbooks, but in practice, it's quietly argumentative in the most polite way possible.
You watch as gold dust is poured onto one side of a scale, grains catching the light like they're showing off just a little. Weights are added to the other side, adjusted grain by grain. The scale arm wobbles, steadies, wobbles again. Everyone leans in, breath held. When it finally levels, there's a collective exhale, barely audible. This moment decides weeks of risk and effort. You feel oddly invested, even though none of this gold technically belongs to you. What surprises you is how much judgment goes into the process. Gold isn't just weighed, it's assessed. Color matters, texture matters, purity is discussed in low voices. Someone rubs a pinch between fingers, then nods slowly. Another tilts their head, unconvinced. You're reminded of modern coffee tastings, except the stakes are dehydration and potential ruin instead of a bad latte. A quirky tidbit floats through the shade. Some traders claim they can tell the origin of gold by smell when it's warmed in the hand. River gold, they say, smells cooler than desert-mined gold. This is almost certainly nonsense, but nobody laughs. Superstitions are treated gently here, like fragile tools that might still work under the right conditions. Historians still argue whether ancient traders could reliably assess gold purity without advanced metallurgy, or whether much of this confidence was performative, meant to project authority rather than precision. Sitting here, watching the process, you suspect it's a bit of both. The assessments feel real, but so does the need to appear certain. Doubt, like spilled water, is dangerous. Once weighed, the gold is divided into portions, not equal portions, fair ones. There's a difference, and everyone seems to understand it instinctively. Shares reflect investment, labor, reputation. You learn quickly that arguing too hard over a fraction of a weight marks you as short-sighted. Long-term partnerships matter more than squeezing out an extra grain today. Someone murmurs a reminder that tomorrow's journey is longer than today's disagreement. That's joke 2, dry and effective. You're allowed to handle a small bundle, supervised, of course. It's heavier than it looks, dense in a way that surprises you every time. This density becomes a recurring theme. Gold's weight is its blessing and its curse. Every decision from here on out will revolve around managing that weight without advertising it. As measurements conclude, records are kept, not written, at least not always, but remembered. Oral accounting is strong here, reinforced by repetition and ritual. Names are spoken alongside weights. You notice how carefully people listen when their share is announced. Memory, in this context, is infrastructure. Forgetting isn't an option. A fringe practice emerges as the final tallies are made. One trader insists on setting aside a tiny symbolic amount of gold, not for trade, but for the road. It's meant to appease the journey itself, an offering to uncertainty. No one objects. The amount is negligible, and the comfort it provides is immense. You think about all the modern equivalents, buffer savings, extra phone chargers, snacks just in case. As the gold is wrapped and prepared for packing, the mood shifts again. Measurement is complete. Debate settles. Decisions solidify. There's a sense of crossing an invisible threshold. From this point forward, mistakes become harder to fix. You feel the weight of that, both literal and emotional, pressing gently but insistently. You catch yourself relaxing, lulled by the quiet precision of it all. The careful movements, the low voices, the shared understanding that this work matters but doesn't need drama. Measuring wealth without coins turns out to be a strangely calming exercise, like watching a clock without numbers. Time still passes, value still exists, and somehow you don't need everything spelled out to trust the process.
Once the gold is measured and agreed upon, it doesn't immediately disappear into some dramatic hiding place.
Instead, it lingers, just briefly, as if everyone wants one last look before the real work begins. This is where leather, fiber, and quiet craftsmanship take over. You shift closer, settling into the shade again, and notice how the pace slows even further. Packing gold isn't rushed. Rushing is how seams split and secrets leak. You're shown the materials first. Leather pouches made from goat or sheep hide, cured until they're tough but still flexible. Woven bags crafted from plant fibers, tight enough that fine dust won't escape, but soft enough to mold around other cargo. This is a mainstream historical fact. Organic materials like leather and woven textiles were standard for transporting valuables in antiquity, especially in environments where rigid containers could crack or draw attention. Wood boxes exist, but they're heavy, noisy, and suspiciously box-shaped. You run your fingers over one pouch, feeling the grain of the leather, the tiny imperfections where the hide remembers being an animal. These aren't decorative items, they're tools refined by generations of trial and error. A trader explains, patiently, like you're 5, that seams are placed off-center on purpose. If a pouch rubs against a camel's flank for days, a centered seam wears evenly. An off-center seam doesn't. It's a small detail, but one that can mean the difference between arriving with gold or arriving with regret. The gold is poured carefully inside, never filling a pouch completely. This surprises you. Wouldn't fuller be more efficient? Apparently not. Partially filled pouches shift less, strain less, and are easier to hide among other goods. Historians still argue whether these packing techniques evolved primarily from camel handling needs or from security concerns, but watching the process, you suspect the answer is yes. Each pouch is weighed again, not for value this time, but for balance. Someone gives it a gentle shake near your ear, listening. If the gold shifts too freely, more padding is added, scraps of cloth, dried grass, even folded letters or lists that no longer matter. You're amused to realize that ancient packing peanuts existed, and they were just as improvised as yours at home. A quirky tidbit surfaces as someone stitches a pouch closed. Certain traders preferred red-dyed thread, believing it discouraged tearing. Others insist color doesn't matter, only stitch length. No argument follows. Both methods coexist peacefully, which might be the most historically accurate detail of all. You think about how many modern debates could end the same way if everyone just kept sewing. The woven bags come next. These are often used for gold dust rather than nuggets, lined with extra fabric and tied with complex knots. You're shown how the knot works, simple to untie if you know the trick, maddening if you don't. This is intentional, security through mild inconvenience. You try it yourself and fail twice before succeeding. Someone smiles kindly and tells you that's better than failing later when your hands are tired and your patience is gone. As pouches are sealed, they're marked, but not labeled in any obvious way. A tiny notch in the leather, a specific knot pattern, a stitch that turns left instead of right. These are the woven secrets, invisible to outsiders, but instantly recognizable to the group. This practice is well attested in historical accounts of trade cultures, discrete identification methods that don't advertise value. You're struck by how subtle intelligence can be. You notice that no single person handles all the gold. Responsibility is distributed. One fills, another ties, a third inspects. This reduces temptation and error, and it keeps everyone involved. Historians still argue whether this division of labor was primarily about trust building or fraud prevention, but here it simply feels sensible, like cooking together so no one burns the meal. Joke 3 arrives softly when someone remarks that a poorly tied pouch walks away on its own. No one laughs loudly, but a few people nod, which tells you the joke is also a warning. You retie your knot just in case. Once finished, the pouches don't go straight onto camels. They're set aside, grouped carefully, and covered with plain cloth, out of sight but not out of mind. You feel a shift in atmosphere. The gold is now contained, tamed, turned from shimmering possibility into manageable responsibility. It's oddly anticlimactic and oddly comforting. You realize that these containers are more than storage. They're philosophy made physical. Flexibility over rigidity, subtlety over display, redundancy over efficiency. Every stitch and knot reflects an understanding of the desert that goes beyond maps and distances. The desert notices mistakes. These pouches are an attempt to go unnoticed. As the last seam is checked and the last knot pulled tight, you feel the group exhale again. Another invisible milestone passed. The gold is no longer just valuable, it's portable. And portability, you're learning, is the real magic trick here.
The next lesson arrives without announcement, sliding naturally into the work like sand into a sandal. Now that the gold is wrapped and quiet, the real cleverness begins, hiding value in plain sight. You expect dramatic concealment, false bottoms, secret compartments, but what you get instead is something much calmer and far more effective. The trick isn't to hide gold completely. The trick is to make it look boring. You're handed a bundle of ordinary trade goods, dried dates, lumps of incense resin, rolls of cloth, small sacks of grain. This, you're told, is camouflage. A mainstream historical fact comes into focus here. Nubian traders rarely traveled carrying only gold. They moved mixed cargo, combining precious metals with everyday commodities that justified the journey and deflected attention. A caravan that looks like it's just hauling food and fabric attracts less interest than one that looks shiny. You watch as gold pouches are tucked among these items, never clustered, never obvious. One goes beneath a sack of grain, another between folded textiles, another pressed against a bundle of firewood where its density actually helps stabilize the load. You're reminded uncomfortably of how you hide snacks in your grocery bags so they don't get crushed, except the snack is worth a small fortune and crushing it would ruin several lives. Someone explains that gold should never be the top or bottom layer. Top layers invite curious hands. Bottom layers suffer the most strain. Middle layers are safest, cushioned, and ignored. Historians still argue whether this packing logic was universally taught or learned individually through hard experience. But judging by how instinctive everyone seems, you suspect it's both. Formal wisdom reinforced by memory of what went wrong last time. You're invited to help arrange a load, and you do your best to imitate what you've seen. You place a pouch too close to the edge and immediately feel a gentle correction. Not scolding, just a quiet shift of hands. The message is clear. Subtle mistakes are still mistakes.
You nod, absorbing it all, trying not to think about how many things in your modern life you pack badly without consequences. A quirky tidbit surfaces as someone tucks a gold pouch inside a hollowed piece of resin. Apparently, certain aromatic resins were believed to confuse the scent of gold for animals, and, by extension, for people with bad intentions. There's no evidence this worked, but it smelled nice, and that apparently counted for something. You inhale and decide that if you were going to guard gold, you'd prefer it smelled pleasant too. As loads come together, the visual effect is underwhelming. That's the point. Each camel looks like it's carrying the same dull assortment of goods. No one camel looks richer than another. This is deliberate equality, a defense against both envy and theft. You realize how different this is from modern security thinking, which often relies on obvious barriers. Here, invisibility is the barrier. There's also a psychological layer. When gold is hidden among mundane items, even the carriers think about it less. This reduces anxiety, which reduces mistakes. Someone jokes, joke one, that worrying too much about gold makes it heavier. You laugh softly, then wonder if that's metaphorically true. You notice that some gold is placed near items that require frequent checking, like water skins or food sacks. This seems counterintuitive until it's explained. Frequent casual contact ensures problems are noticed early. A pouch that shifts or leaks is discovered during a routine stop, not at the end of the journey. It's the ancient equivalent of keeping your passport in the pocket you check 10 times a day. Disguising value also extends to behavior. No one acts differently around the loads that contain more gold. No lingering glances, no protective hovering. Everything is treated as equally unremarkable. This social camouflage is just as important as physical hiding. You try to mirror it, reminding yourself not to stare at the exact spot where you know a particularly heavy pouch rests. It's harder than you expect. Humans love secrets, even when they're supposed to ignore them. A fringe belief emerges quietly. Some traders prefer to place gold near items associated with abundance, grain, dates, oil, believing prosperity blends when stored together. Others dismiss this as poetic nonsense, but still don't separate the items. No harm in a little symbolic optimism, after all. You think about how people still keep lucky charms in wallets, right next to credit cards that technically don't need luck at all. Joke 2 slips in when someone remarks that the best hiding place is where even you forget it's there. A pause follows, then a gentle reminder to maybe not forget it completely. You smile, appreciating the balance between humor and caution. As the final loads are assembled, you step back and take it all in. The caravan looks normal. That's the triumph. Nothing about it announces wealth. Nothing promises reward. It's just another group of traders heading into the desert, carrying the quiet weight of careful decisions. You feel a sense of calm settle over you. Hiding value in plain sight turns out to be less about trickery and more about humility. Gold becomes one item among many, important but not dominant. The desert, you're learning, punishes arrogance faster than ignorance. By refusing to spotlight the gold, the traders respect the environment they're about to cross. As the camels shift and settle under their loads, you realize this stage of packing isn't flashy, but might be the most crucial. It's the difference between being noticed and being ignored. And in the desert, being ignored is a kind of luxury.
By now, the gold is invisible, and that's exactly how everyone wants it. Attention shifts away from what is being carried and toward how it's carried. This is the part that feels the most mathematical, even though no one ever calls it that. Balancing loads for long marches is less about numbers on a scale and more about listening, to camels, to straps, to the quiet warnings of experience. You're brought in close as the final adjustments begin. Each camel kneels, patient but alert, and the packs are lifted into place. Mainstream history backs this up clearly. Camel caravans depended on careful load distribution to prevent injury, exhaustion, and catastrophic delays. An unbalanced load doesn't just slow one camel, it disrupts the entire rhythm of the caravan. And rhythm, out here, is survival. You watch as loads are shifted by hand widths, inches that feel insignificant until someone explains that an inch off on one side becomes agony after 6 hours of walking. Gold's density complicates things. Even hidden, it pulls. Someone presses a palm against a sack and nods, sensing weight rather than seeing it. You're impressed and slightly intimidated by how much information is exchanged through touch alone. You're asked to help lift a pack, and the weight surprises you again. It's not unbearable, but it's stubborn. It doesn't forgive bad posture. You're gently corrected, bend this way, not that way, and you realize these movements are ancient ergonomics, refined long before anyone complained about back pain in an office chair. A quirky tidbit emerges as the work continues. Some traders claim camels can detect imbalance emotionally, not just physically, and will become irritable if they feel disrespected by sloppy packing. Whether this is true or just a polite way of saying the camel will make your life miserable, you're not sure. Either way, you take extra care. Water is factored in next. This is where things get serious. Water skins are weighed, then weighed again, then compared against distance and known wells. This isn't guesswork. Traders memorize routes the way you memorize phone numbers, and they know how much water disappears per person per day in different conditions. Historians still argue whether ancient desert traders had formal calculations for this or relied entirely on experience. But watching the quiet certainty of the process, you suspect experience functioned as calculation. Food is balanced not just by weight, but by accessibility. Heavier items go deeper into the load, lighter ones on top. Gold stays cushioned, unmoving, surrounded by things that can compress without complaint. Someone mutters, joke one, that dates complain less than people, which feels accurate even now. You notice that no camel carries the most important load. Value is spread evenly. This reduces risk and keeps any single animal from becoming a target. It also means everyone shares responsibility equally. You like that. It feels fair, even if fairness won't matter much if something goes wrong. Straps are tightened, loosened, tightened again. Leather stretches in heat, contracts in cool air. This is accounted for. Knots are tied with the expectation that they'll change shape over time. You're shown a specific knot that loosens gradually instead of suddenly, a small mercy in a landscape that offers few. A quirky tidbit emerges as the work continues. Someone adjusts a load slightly off from perfect balance, then steps back. They explain that absolute balance can make a camel too rigid in its gait, while a barely perceptible imbalance encourages natural movement. You're not sure if this is biomechanics or folklore, but no one argues. The camel seems content, which is apparently the final authority. Joke 2 slips in when someone remarks that humans, unlike camels, complain even when perfectly balanced. There's a soft chorus of agreement. You file this under timeless truths. As the last camel rises, loads settle with a dull, reassuring thud. Nothing shifts dramatically. No straps creak ominously. This is the sound everyone wants. It's the sound of preparation done well. You feel a strange pride even though you're still mostly an observer.
You step back and take in the line of camels, each one a moving equation of weight, water, food, and hidden gold. The desert hasn't appeared yet, but it's already influencing every decision. You understand now that packing isn't a single act, it's an ongoing conversation with distance and heat and fatigue. As the caravan prepares to move, you feel your own body adjust unconsciously, shoulders relaxing, breath slowing. There's comfort in knowing that so much thought has gone into what you're about to carry across nothingness. Balance, you're learning, isn't about perfection, it's about endurance.
The moment before departure is quieter than you expect. No dramatic speeches, no raised voices, just a subtle shift in posture, a collective slowing, as if everyone agrees without saying it that now is the time to stop adjusting and start trusting. You feel it in your chest, that gentle tightening that comes right before movement. This is where rituals slip in, not as grand ceremonies, but as habits worn smooth by repetition. You're encouraged to pause, literally pause, stand still, look back once toward the Nile, now distant enough to feel like a memory instead of a presence. This isn't sentimentality, it's orientation. A mainstream historical fact fits neatly here. Many ancient desert cultures incorporated brief stopping rituals before long journeys, serving both spiritual and practical purposes, calming nerves, synchronizing the group, and marking the psychological boundary between safety and uncertainty. Someone murmurs a short prayer. Not everyone joins in, but no one interrupts. Another trader touches the ground lightly, then their forehead, then the first camel in line. You're not told to do anything specific, which somehow makes the moment feel more inclusive. You copy what feels respectful without understanding every meaning, and that seems to be enough. A small charm is passed around, a piece of carved stone, smooth from years of handling. Each person holds it briefly, then passes it on. You're told it's meant to remind the road you're paying attention. Historians still argue whether such objects were believed to have real protective power or simply functioned as stress management tools, but holding it, you feel your breathing slow. If it's a placebo, it's an effective one. There's a quirky custom involving water. Each person takes a sip, not because they're thirsty, but because starting with a dry mouth is considered unlucky. Someone jokes, joke one, that the desert can smell hesitation, and it smells a lot like dehydration. You smile, sip, and feel grounded. The camels are coaxed to their feet in unison, no shouting, just familiar sounds, clicks and murmurs, the kind of communication that doesn't need translation. You notice how everyone stands slightly apart during this moment, giving the animals space. Respect is practical here. A startled camel can undo hours of careful packing. As the caravan forms its line, roles settle into place without discussion. Leaders drift to the front. The most observant take positions along the sides. Less experienced members, yes, that's you, are tucked into the middle, where mistakes are easier to correct and dangers less immediate. This isn't hierarchy for its own sake, it's protection. You appreciate it more than you'd like to admit. A fringe belief surfaces quietly. Some traders insist on stepping off with the right foot first, others with the left, depending on family tradition. You hesitate for half a second, then pick one and commit. Overthinking is discouraged. Confidence, even borrowed confidence, counts. There's a final walk along the line of camels,
Straps are touched, not adjusted. This is important. Touching is acknowledgement, not doubt. You're told that changing things at the last moment invites problems. This is the point where preparation ends and acceptance begins. You find that strangely comforting. Joke, too, drifts through when someone mutters that the desert prefers travelers who stop fussing. No one disagrees. You take a breath and let your shoulders drop. As the first steps are taken, the sound is softer than you expect. Sand absorbs noise. Footfalls blend together. The caravan moves as one long, slow organism, and you're part of it now. The gold is packed, hidden, balanced, and most importantly, no longer the center of anyone's attention. The road is. You feel the shift internally, too. The anxious mental checklist fades. There's nothing left to tweak, nothing left to optimize. Only walking remains. You realize that these rituals aren't about pleasing unseen forces. They're about marking a transition from control to endurance, from planning to presence. The Nile is gone from sight now, replaced by open land and the promise of heat. You don't look back again. That was the rule. Looking back belongs to before. Ahead lies the long, steady rhythm of the desert, and for the first time you feel ready to meet it. Not bravely, not heroically, but calmly, which might be even better.
The first days into the open desert don't announce themselves with drama. There's no sudden wall of sand or cinematic shift in lighting. Instead, the land simply opens. The ground flattens, the colors mute, and the horizon stretches until it feels more like an idea than a place. You walk, and then you keep walking, and slowly the caravan's rhythm settles into something steady enough to feel almost gentle. Your body adjusts before your mind does. Steps fall into a pattern. Breathing syncs with movement. The camels sway ahead of you, each step rocking the loads in a slow, hypnotic motion. This is a mainstream historical reality. Successful desert caravans moved at a measured, consistent pace, avoiding bursts of speed that wasted energy and water. Efficiency here isn't about getting there faster, it's about arriving at all. Packing decisions begin to quietly justify themselves. Nothing shifts, nothing rattles. The gold, hidden among ordinary goods, stays exactly where it's supposed to. You feel oddly reassured every time you brush past a load and sense its calm solidity. No surprises. That's the goal. At night, the routine changes but doesn't stop. Camp is made with the same care as packing. Loads are loosened slightly, not removed unless necessary. This is when you learn another subtle reason gold was packed the way it was. Frequent unloading increases risk. Each movement is a chance for loss, damage, or memory failure. Better to let things rest. A quirky tidbit surfaces during the first evening stop. Someone mentions that certain traders believed rearranging loads at night confused bad luck, as if misfortune followed patterns and needed to be thrown off the scent. Others shrug and say they rearrange because camels shift weight naturally over the day. Historians still argue whether nightly adjustments were ritualistic or purely practical, but you notice that everyone participates regardless. Belief and habit blur easily out here. You eat simply, drink carefully, and lie back to stare at a sky that feels aggressively large. Joke 1 arrives softly when someone points out that the stars make excellent company because they never ask how tired you are. You chuckle, then yawn,
then realize how quickly exhaustion sneaks up when there's nothing to distract you.
Somewhere between the endless horizon and the third or fourth identical sunrise, a subtle tension settles in. It isn't fear exactly, it's awareness. You're carrying something valuable, and value has a way of changing how people look at one another, even when everyone started as friends. Guarding gold, you're learning, isn't just about outsiders. Sometimes it's about managing closeness. You notice how vigilance expresses itself quietly. No one announces that they're watching, they just notice. Who walks where, who lingers near which lode, who volunteers for night watch a little too eagerly or avoids it a little too carefully. This isn't paranoia, it's maintenance. Mainstream historians agree that desert caravans relied heavily on internal trust systems reinforced by constant, low-level observation. Theft was rare, not because people were better, but because systems made it difficult and obvious. Gold's placement plays a role here. Because it's spread across multiple loads and disguised among ordinary goods, no single person can access much without help. You realize this is intentional social engineering. Even if someone were tempted, acting on it would require coordination, and that leaves traces. It's harder to conspire when everyone's a little tired and very aware of one another. A quirky tidbit circulates one afternoon as you walk. Some traders believe gold remembers hands and that touching it unnecessarily invites misfortune. This belief conveniently discourages fiddling. You're not sure if anyone truly believes the memory part, but the behavioral outcome is clear. Hands stay busy with ropes, water skins, and walking sticks. Gold is left alone. Historians still argue whether such beliefs emerged organically or were encouraged by experienced traders as a form of behavioral control. Watching how naturally everyone avoids unnecessary contact, you suspect it doesn't matter. Effective ideas stick regardless of origin. Friendship continues, but it changes shape. Jokes are shorter. Conversations are practical. This isn't coldness, it's conservation. Emotional energy is rationed like water. Joke 1 slips in when someone remarks that the desert prefers small talk to big secrets. You smile, understanding the subtext immediately. Night watches rotate, and you take your turn. Sitting quietly under the stars, you realize how exposed everything is. There are no walls, no doors, just people, animals, and trust. You scan the darkness, not expecting trouble, but prepared for it. The gold's quiet presence feels heavier at night, not physically, but mentally. You remind yourself that it's packed well, hidden well, and shared well. That helps. You notice that people avoid forming private clusters. Conversations happen in pairs or small, shifting groups. This fluidity prevents exclusion and suspicion. It's subtle but effective. Even friendships are managed with the journey in mind. You're struck by how mature it all feels, like a group project where everyone actually wants it to succeed. A fringe practice appears during one evening stop. Someone suggests rotating which camel carries which type of goods, though the gold itself stays put. This, they say, prevents patterns from forming that others could exploit. Historians debate whether such practices were widespread or situational, but here it's treated as common sense. Predictability is the enemy. Joke 2 surfaces when someone mutters that camels are the worst secret keepers anyway.
A camel snorts right on cue, which feels like a punchline delivered by the universe. As days pass, you realize guarding gold is less about active defense and more about preventing opportunities. Nothing feels tense. In fact, the calm is the defense. Everyone knows what's at stake, and that shared knowledge creates alignment. No speeches required. You catch yourself trusting the group more deeply now, precisely because trust isn't assumed. It's reinforced daily through structure and habit. The gold remains untouched, unseen, and unremarked upon. That's the highest compliment it can receive. As you walk on, you feel the strange comfort of collective responsibility. The gold belongs to everyone and no one at the same time, and in that balance, it stays safe, not through force, but through quiet agreement.
By now, the heat has stopped being a surprise and started being a constant companion. The kind that doesn't demand attention because it already has all of it. The sun presses down evenly, without malice, just persistence. You feel it on your shoulders, on the back of your neck, seeping into the straps and sacks and everything else that thought it understood warmth. This is where packing decisions meet reality in the most physical way possible. You sweat, and so does everything else. Leather softens, fibers relax. Knots that felt perfect at dawn need a second glance by midday. This is not a failure of planning, it's expected. A mainstream historical fact settles in. Desert traders planned for heat-induced changes in materials, knowing that organic packing materials expand, stretch, and shift under prolonged sun exposure. Gold doesn't change, but everything holding it does. You begin to notice how often people touch the loads, not nervously, just attentively. A palm pressed here, a strap tugged there. These micro-adjustments happen without stopping the caravan. You admire the efficiency. No one announces, "I am fixing something." They just fix it. The desert doesn't reward announcements. Sand becomes part of everything. It works its way into folds of cloth, into hair, into the very idea of comfort. You're grateful again that gold was sealed so carefully. Fine dust escaping a pouch here would be a disaster, nearly impossible to recover. Historians still argue how often such losses occurred, but judging by the paranoia surrounding seams and knots, you suspect often enough to matter. A quirky tidbit surfaces as someone shakes sand from a sack. Some traders believed a thin layer of sand actually protected leather by reducing friction, like a primitive lubricant. Others argue it accelerated wear. No one resolves the debate. They just keep walking. Heat changes behavior too. Conversations shorten. Jokes become rarer but sharper. Joke 1 arrives when someone observes that the sun has a very consistent personality, overbearing and uninterested in feedback. You smile weakly, conserving energy. The gold's weight feels different now. Not heavier exactly, but more present. Fatigue amplifies awareness. You understand why gold was distributed so carefully. If one load felt noticeably heavier than the others, resentment would bloom quickly under this sun. Balance isn't just physical, it's emotional. You feel the camels responding to the conditions. Their pace adjusts slightly, steps shortening, heads lowering. They know this environment better than you ever will. You trust them implicitly, which feels wise. A fringe belief emerges quietly. Some traders claim camels can sense underground water far better than humans. Historians debate this fiercely, but out here, faith in animal intuition is practical. You follow the camel, not the argument. Midday breaks are brief and deliberate. Shade is created where it doesn't exist. Cloth stretched, bodies positioned just so. Loads are not unpacked. This is crucial. The heat makes handling gold risky. Sweat makes fingers clumsy. you're reminded again that the gold's best defense is not being touched at all. Joke 2 surfaces when someone remarks that the sun is very interested in everyone's mistakes, especially the small ones. You resolve not to provide it with entertainment. As the afternoon drags on, you feel the rhythm slow further. Nobody complains. Complaints waste breath. Instead, there's a shared understanding that today will end eventually, just like yesterday did. This mental framing is as important as water rationing. Historians still argue whether such stoic attitudes were cultural or situational, but you suspect the desert teaches them quickly. By evening, when the heat finally loosens its grip, you feel an almost exaggerated relief. Loads are checked again, gently, respectfully. Everything holds. The gold remains quiet, secure, and unremarkable. That's the highest praise possible. As you settle down for the night, muscles aching in a dull, manageable way, you realize how much the heat has shaped every packing choice made so far. Flexibility, cushioning, balance. These weren't abstract ideas back by the Nile. They were preparations for this exact feeling, this slow, relentless pressure that rewards patience and punishes shortcuts. You lie back, watching the sky deepen into darker blues and feel sleep edging closer. The sand shifts beneath you, warm but forgiving. Tomorrow will bring more of the same, and strangely, that thought comforts you. Consistency is survival here, and tonight, everything is still consistent.
The appearance of the first oasis feels almost understated, which seems unfair given how much anticipation has quietly built up around it. There's no sudden cheer, no dramatic rush forward. Instead, the caravan subtly straightens, posture shifting as if everyone has collectively remembered how to stand a little taller. You feel it too. This is a checkpoint, not just for water and rest, but for reputation. Approaching a trading stop changes how everyone moves. Loads are still balanced, gold still hidden, but awareness sharpens. You're reminded that oases aren't neutral spaces, they're crossroads. Information flows here as freely as water, and information can be as valuable and dangerous as gold. A mainstream historical fact settles in. Desert oases functioned as hubs of trade, diplomacy, and inspection, where caravans were observed, assessed, and quietly judged. You watch as the camels are guided into shade, not unloaded, never that, but positioned so their packs are visible enough to appear open yet undisturbed. This is intentional transparency. The message is subtle. We have nothing unusual, nothing worth fussing over. Ordinary goods, ordinary people, ordinary journey. You realize how much performance goes into appearing unremarkable. Locals approach, not aggressively, just curiously. Eyes scan the loads with practiced indifference. No one asks directly about gold. That would be impolite and suspicious. Instead, questions circle around food, routes, weather. You answer carefully, mirroring the calm tone of your companions. Oversharing is discouraged. Silence here is a skill. A quirky tidbit surfaces as someone offers to inspect a bundle of resin. It's gently squeezed, sniffed, and praised for its quality. You know there's gold nestled nearby, and you feel a strange thrill watching it go unnoticed. Someone murmurs, joke 1, that gold's greatest talent is being boring at the right moment. You almost laugh, then remember subtlety. Historians still argue how formal inspections at oases truly were. Some accounts suggest organized tolls and official oversight. Others describe informal, socially enforced norms. What you experience feels like a blend. No one demands to see anything, but everyone sees everything. The pressure is ambient, not explicit. Water is exchanged, but carefully. Each skin is checked, not to pry, but to ensure fairness. This too is reputation management. A caravan that hoards water or cheats at an oasis won't be welcomed next time. You're struck by how long-term thinking governs every interaction. Short-term gain is almost never worth long-term exclusion. Gold's packing proves its worth here again. Because it's embedded among trade goods, any casual inspection feels natural. Nothing needs to be rearranged, nothing draws hands deeper into the load. You sense how much anxiety this avoids. The best packing strategy is the one that doesn't require explanation. A fringe belief emerges when someone refuses to let a specific bundle be handled, citing bad luck if the order of things is disturbed. The excuse is accepted without argument. Superstition becomes a polite boundary. Historians debate whether such beliefs were sincere or convenient, but watching how smoothly it deflects attention, you suspect convenience plays a role. Joke 2 drifts through when someone remarks that oases are like mirrors. They show you what others think you are. You consider this as you sit in the shade, sipping water slowly, feeling the weight of unseen judgment pass over you and move on. As the caravan prepares to leave, there's a quiet sense of relief. You passed. Nothing was questioned too closely. The gold remains unseen, unchallenged, reputation intact. You feel oddly proud, as if you personally contributed to this success simply by not doing anything foolish. When you step back onto the sand, the oasis recedes quickly, swallowed by distance. The rhythm resumes. Pack, walk, rest, adjust. But something has shifted. You've crossed a social threshold as well as a geographic one. The caravan now carries not just gold, but a renewed sense of legitimacy. You walk on, calmer than before. If the gold can survive scrutiny as well as heat, you reason, then the system works. And systems that work are deeply comforting when you're far from home.
Somewhere after the oasis, when the relief has worn off and the walking has resumed its steady, hypnotic pace, the desert reminds you that no plan survives unchanged. This is the stretch where small failures appear, not dramatic disasters, just quiet inconveniences that demand creativity. You feel it when a strap creaks a little too loudly, or when a camel shifts its load with a displeased grunt that suggests a complaint form is being mentally filed. It starts with a strap. Of course it does. Leather that held perfectly in the morning heat has dried unevenly overnight and now shows a thin, worrying crack. You notice it because someone else notices it, and that's how most problems are caught out here, by shared attention. A mainstream historical fact slides neatly into place. Desert caravans expected regular equipment failures and carried repair materials specifically for this reason. Nothing was truly finished until the journey ended. The caravan stops, briefly, not a full halt, just enough to deal with the issue before it becomes something worse. The load isn't unpacked, instead weight is redistributed by feel. Someone wedges a folded cloth beneath the strap to reduce friction. Another offers a replacement thong cut from spare leather. You watch how quickly the group adapts, how little fuss is made. This isn't emergency mode, it's routine maintenance. Gold's presence sharpens everyone's focus, but it doesn't dominate the solution. That's important. Repairs are done as if the load contains nothing special, even though everyone knows better. You understand now why gold was packed in flexible containers. A rigid box would complicate everything. Leather and cloth forgive adjustments. They bend with circumstance. A quirky tidbit surfaces as someone patches a tear with an oddly decorative stitch. They explain that visible repairs discourage further tampering. If something looks obviously tended to, people are less likely to interfere. You file this away as ancient psychology, surprisingly elegant in its simplicity. Historians still argue how often caravans lost gold to accidents rather than theft.
Sitting here, watching repairs happen almost automatically, you suspect accidents were more common than anyone liked to admit. The difference between loss and survival often came down to how quickly a problem was noticed and how calmly it was addressed. Later, it's a pouch that causes concern. Not leaking, just worn thinner than expected. Fingers probe the leather gently, assessing risk. The decision is made to nest it inside another pouch, redistributing weight and adding protection. No ceremony, no blame. You're struck by how non-judgmental the process is. Blame doesn't fix anything. Solutions do. Joke 1 slips in when someone remarks that the desert eats leather faster than people expect, especially optimistic people. There's a soft ripple of agreement. Optimism, you're learning, is best kept modest. Camels complain too. One refuses to walk until its load is adjusted by what looks like an absurdly small amount. You'd be tempted to ignore it, but no one does. A fringe belief floats through the group. Camels know when something is wrong long before humans do. Historians debate whether this is intuition, training, or projection, but the practical outcome is clear. The camel is listened to. After the adjustment, it walks on without further protest. Lesson learned. Improvisation becomes the theme of the day. A broken knot is replaced with a different one. A torn bag is reinforced with resin and cloth. Gold remains untouched, but everything around it adapts. You realize that packing was never about locking things into place. It was about creating systems flexible enough to absorb wear without collapsing. Joke 2 arrives quietly when someone notes that every repair is proof the journey is working. If nothing ever broke, you probably weren't moving far enough. You like that. It reframes inconvenience as progress. By evening, the caravan feels slightly altered, but no less stable. In some ways, it feels stronger. Weak points have been identified and addressed. The loads settle again into their familiar, comforting shapes. You feel a growing confidence, not bravado, just trust in the process. As you lie down to rest, you think about how much of this journey depends on letting go of perfection. Gold may be precious, but it's also stubbornly physical. It demands humility. You can't bully it into behaving. You can only work around it, cushion it, adapt to it. Sleep comes easier tonight, perhaps because you've seen problems arise and resolve without catastrophe. The desert tested the packing, and the packing held because it was designed to change.
The land begins to change in ways so subtle you almost miss them at first. The sand firms slightly underfoot. The horizon grows busier, dotted with shapes that suggest walls, tents, or clustered movement. You don't announce it, but you feel it. You're approaching a foreign market. This is where weeks of careful packing finally face their moment of truth, not in the desert, but among people who know exactly what gold should look like, feel like, and weigh like. The caravan slows naturally. No one rushes in arrival. That would look eager, and eagerness invites scrutiny. A mainstream historical fact fits smoothly here. Ancient markets, especially those connected to long-distance trade routes, were highly social spaces, governed by reputation, ritual, and expectation as much as by supply and demand. How you arrived mattered almost as much as what you brought. As you enter the outskirts, you notice the shift in behavior. Backs straighten, movements become slightly more formal. This isn't stiffness, it's professionalism. You're aware now that the gold, quiet and hidden for so long, is about to be acknowledged, carefully, selectively, and never all at once.
Camels are guided into shaded holding areas. Loads are finally loosened in earnest, but still not dismantled. The order matters. Ordinary goods come out first: grain, cloth, resin. The performance of normal trade continues. Buyers approach, touch fabrics, test weights, exchange murmured opinions. You watch this patiently, understanding that gold is never the opening act. A quirky tidbit surfaces as a trader theatrically complains about the dust on his textiles, claiming the desert never returns things the way you lent them. The humor relaxes the atmosphere. Joke 1 lands softly, doing its job. Laughter, even mild laughter, smooths transactions. Only once familiarity is established does the gold emerge, not in a heap, not dramatically. A pouch is opened discreetly. A measured amount is revealed, just enough. You feel the tension sharpen, not unpleasantly, but with focus. This is a different kind of silence than the desert's. This one listens back. The gold is weighed again, now by unfamiliar hands, using familiar methods. Balance scales, known weights, nods that mean more than words. You notice how confident your companions seem. This confidence is the final layer of packing, psychological armor built from consistency. Historians still argue how standardized gold valuation truly was across regions, but in this moment, shared technique bridges cultural distance. A fringe belief flickers through the exchange. One buyer insists that gold carried across long distances settles and becomes more honest. You are not sure what that means, but it sounds reassuring, and no one contradicts it. Symbolism smooths edges again. Negotiations unfold slowly. No raised voices, no visible frustration. Time stretches. You realize that all the effort spent hiding, balancing, and protecting the gold now pays off in trust. Nothing has been lost, nothing damaged. The packaging itself becomes proof of reliability. You're not just selling gold, you're selling evidence of competence. Joke 2 appears when someone remarks that well-packed gold travels better than most people. You think about the cracked strap, the patched pouch, the listening camel, and decide that's probably true. As transactions conclude, gold changes hands, and you feel a surprising lightness, not just in the loads, but in yourself. Weight lifted physically and mentally. Yet there's no triumph, no celebration, just a quiet satisfaction. This was always the goal, to arrive intact, unnoticed, and respected. You watch as remaining goods are repacked for the return journey. Habits persist even when the stakes change. That consistency is comforting. You realize that packing methods don't end with the sale. They shape everything that comes after. As evening approaches and market noise softens, you sit back and observe. Foreign voices, familiar gestures, shared understanding, built from shared tools. Gold may be universal, but how you carry it defines who you are. And here, today, that definition has held up under examination. With the market behind you, and the gold no longer tucked into its careful hiding places, you expect something to feel dramatically different. Strangely, it doesn't. The loads are lighter, yes, and the camels seem faintly pleased about that, but the habits remain. Packing methods linger like muscle memory. Even without gold, everything is still balanced, cushioned, and quietly considered. Reputation, it turns out, travels lighter than metal, but lasts much longer. You notice how people speak about the journey now, not in grand summaries, but in small references. That knot held well. or that pouch should be lined next time. These comments are gentle, reflective, and forward-looking. A mainstream historical fact fits neatly here. In long-distance trade cultures, reputation was cumulative, built from repeated successful journeys rather than singular achievements. How you packed and protected goods became part of your professional identity. You realize that buyers weren't just evaluating gold, they were evaluating methods, intact seams, consistent weights, calm handling. These details signaled trustworthiness more clearly than any oath. The way the gold arrived spoke for everyone involved. You feel a quiet pride in that, even though your role was small. Small roles matter in systems like this. A quirky tidbit surfaces during a relaxed conversation over food. Someone mentions that certain traders could recognize a caravan's origin just by examining its packing style, knot choices, pouch shapes, load symmetry. It sounds exaggerated, but as you think back, you could probably identify your own group's work from a distance now. Historians still argue whether such packing signatures truly existed or are romanticized in later accounts, but the idea feels plausible after weeks of shared technique. Without the constant mental weight of guarding gold, conversations loosen up, jokes stretch out a bit longer. Joke 1 appears when someone observes that people are much friendlier once the valuable things have already left. You laugh, recognizing the truth in it. The camels are tended with extra care. They've earned it. Loads are adjusted to reflect the lighter burden, but still balanced, still respectful. You notice that no one suggests being sloppy just because the most precious cargo is gone. Sloppiness, you're learning, isn't situational. It's a habit, and habits follow you home. A fringe belief emerges as someone repacks personal items. Keeping old packing methods, even when circumstances change, is said to invite future success. Change too much, and the road forgets you. Historians would likely frame this as tradition reinforcing consistency, but sitting here, you feel how comforting it is to do familiar things in unfamiliar places. Joke 2 drifts in when someone notes that the desert doesn't care what you're carrying. It just notices how you carry it. You file that away as wisdom disguised as humor. As the return journey is discussed, you realize what you've learned will shape every future trip, not just gold journeys, but any situation involving risk, trust, and endurance. Pack lightly, distribute responsibility, hide what matters among what doesn't. These principles extend far beyond the desert. You catch yourself thinking ahead, imagining the Nile again, the cool mud, the quiet trays of sand and water. The journey has closed a loop even before you complete it physically. That sense of continuity is powerful. Reputation, knowledge, and method all move in cycles. As evening settles, you feel the calm satisfaction of work done well. No triumph, no drama, just competence proven and remembered. The gold may be gone, but its lessons remain, stitched into habits, knotted into muscle memory, and ready to be carried forward into whatever journey comes next.
The journey home feels different, not because the road has changed, but because you have. The desert stretches out the same way it did before, flat, patient, quietly demanding. But now you walk it with lighter loads and heavier understanding. Each step carries the echo of what worked, what held, what quietly proved itself without ever asking for praise. Packing still matters, even without gold. In some ways, it matters more now because habit reveals itself most clearly when pressure is gone. You notice that everyone still checks straps with the same care. Knots are still tied properly. Loads are still balanced with the same attention to detail. This consistency reflects a mainstream historical truth. Successful traders didn't compartmentalize skill. Methods used for precious cargo became standard practice for everything else, reinforcing reliability across all journeys. You find yourself helping without being asked, adjusting a bundle, offering a cloth to pad a strap. The movements feel natural now, almost automatic. Gold taught you these habits, but they no longer belong to gold alone. They've become part of how you move through uncertainty. A quirky tidbit surfaces during a quiet afternoon walk. Someone mentions that old traders could tell how successful a journey was by how calmly people packed at the end. Frantic packing meant problems. Slow, deliberate packing meant lessons learned. Historians still argue whether such observations were recorded or simply passed down orally. But walking here now, you understand the logic. Calm is data. The camels sense it too. They move easily, loads lighter, pace relaxed. You're told, half-jokingly, joke one, that camels remember good journeys and behave better on the next one. Whether memory or conditioning, the result is the same. Cooperation deepens with experience. As days pass, you reflect on the Nile, the gold dust, the leather pouches, the hidden layers of ordinary goods. None of it feels distant. It feels integrated, like a long thought reaching its conclusion. You realize that the true value of the gold journey wasn't just the metal exchanged, but the system refined. Each trip makes the next one safer, smoother, quieter. A fringe belief comes up near the end. Some traders say the desert returns wisdom slowly, long after the journey ends. You'll notice it later, in unrelated moments, packing for something else, weighing a decision, choosing what to carry and what to leave behind. You smile, because even now you can feel that happening. Joke 2 arrives gently when someone remarks that gold leaves, but habits overstay their welcome. No one disagrees. As the familiar shape of the Nile finally returns to the horizon, there's no celebration, just recognition. The loop closes the same way it opened, calmly, deliberately, without spectacle. You step back onto softer ground, feeling the difference underfoot, appreciating it without clinging to it. You think about how ancient Nubian traders packed gold for desert journeys and how much of that wisdom still applies. Hide what matters, balance the load, expect wear, adapt gently, trust systems more than luck. These ideas feel steady, reliable, like something you can rest against. And now, as the story loosens its grip and the images begin to soften, you allow yourself to slow down. The desert fades into memory. The camels settle. The pouches rest, empty now, but ready. Your breathing evens out. Nothing needs adjusting anymore. The journey doesn't end abruptly. It just eases, like sand settling after a step, like water smoothing over a footprint. You're safe, you're still, and you can let go. Wind down begins here. The night grows quieter around you, sounds stretching farther apart, thoughts becoming less defined, like shapes seen through heat haze. You don't need to remember every detail, just the feeling of steadiness, of things held together without strain. The road has done its work. You've done yours. So rest now. Let the weight drop away. Let the careful knots loosen in your mind. Tomorrow can wait.